Welcome to the CrossFit Jungle Gym podcast. Today, we're talking about when to go all out. That can mean different things to different people, but there's a time when going all out makes a huge difference, and there's times when going all out doesn't make that big of a difference, but wastes time and energy. So, when I was 5 years old, my parents asked me if I wanted to start wrestling, and I said yes. Was super excited, and about 5 sentences later, I said, "Do I have to wear a singlet?" And they said yes, and I was out. I didn't wrestle that year. Um, the next year, I must have forgot about the singlet thing or stopped caring because I went out and I started wrestling and went to practices and mostly loved it. Um, Now in youth wrestling, and this was in Wisconsin and in the 90s and 2000s. Um, but you wrestled weekend tournaments, Saturdays, Sundays, and it would be a 4-man round robin of like local other wrestlers that weigh the same weight as you. And I took fourth place out of 4 in my first tournament. And that is not something that I like to do, lose or take last place. So that never happened again in 13 years that I took last place. Um, and I'm sure glad that a singlet or having taken last place didn't stop me from wrestling because of how much I learned from such a physical and mentally grueling sport. Um, the lesson that I really want to talk about today, though, is the conservation of energy and when to go all out, um, and how it relates to fitness. So, like, one of the things in wrestling, it's a very physical sport. Um, there's a ton of skill involved in, like, you don't have to be the strongest, you don't have to be um, the biggest. You're going to wrestle people of the same size as you, but um, it's not about how strong you are or just how skilled you are. It's got to be a match of physical and physical strength and conditioning, but also highly skilled. If you're more skilled, you don't need nearly as much strength. Um, but in wrestling, if you're good at the basics, like you can hang with, like if you're good at the basics, you can hang with just about any wrestler until you get to an opponent that's just exceptional at a particular thing and you're not good at it. Um, it's like that with just about everything in life. Is when you're matched against an opponent, whether it's a human or otherwise, like if they're more skilled, they win. Um, One of the things that happens in wrestling is if you were to, and like, for those of you that do CrossFit already, like, what it's like to go all out for 30 seconds and, like, I mean, really go all out. And then at 30 seconds, you're like, uh-oh. And in wrestling, you can't do that. Like, you're wrestling an opponent. So, like, there's sort of this threshold, and it's, if you don't go hard enough, you will lose instantly. Like, for example, if I just stand there and let the guy take me down to my back, he'll pin me. And then there's some amount of energy. If you go all out, that you expend all of your energy before the match is over, and then you're basically rendered useless later. In which case, you'll be manipulated and lose later on. So the threshold is you have to output literally just enough energy not to be manhandled by the other person. So, like if somebody else's at fitness level is way higher, like you'll get crushed. Just based out of running out of running out of steam in the middle of the workout or in the middle of the match. So, in order to be good. Like, you have to understand threshold, right? In wrestling, it's great because it's one on one. There's only your threshold and the other person's threshold, and when you're going head to head, like, you just have to be able to expend enough skilled energy just a little bit above what they are so that you don't lose right on the spot. Okay. And in fitness, it's like, this is your default mode. Like, human beings are default moded to, I'm going to do just enough to survive. And that's great, because you're going to do just enough to survive, and you can serve all that other energy for something else. Now, in wrestling, it's just extremely highlighted. Like, the match will be won or lost on whether you do this well, or you're just so highly skilled that you're going to stomp somebody, or somebody else is so highly skilled that they're just going to stomp you. And what we need to be able to do is, like, when we relate this to fitness, is like, what is the minimum effort level that you need to put in on a daily basis? So, like, you could talk about this on a macro or micro level, but, like, in fitness, you just need to be good. You don't need to be exceptional at all of the things that you don't need to be exceptional at nutrition, at working out, or being hydrated. Like, you just got to be good at them. Like, your default mode has to be, on a daily basis, a net positive, like, enough to keep pushing you in the right direction, right? And you need to know the basics. You need to be good at them. You don't need to be exceptional at them, because putting in the effort to be exceptional at all of them may be expending energy, whether it's mental or physical. Like, in a wrestling match, it was physical. In fitness, it may be a mental battle. Like, going all out all the time is something that is not sustainable. Now, if we can get your minimum effort level to be a net positive on a daily basis, like, you're going in the direction of your goals with minimal effort, then over the course of a long period of time, a year, 2 years, like, you're going to get to your goals. Now, this is important, that every single day is a net positive. And, like, you can translate this to finance or to work. Like, the default mode needs to be net positive. You have to make progress every day. And we need to get sort of default mode to net positive. If we can do that, then you're going to have success, and it's going to be guaranteed. Now, it's like, sort of the just getting by and just moving forward a little bit every day as the default means that you don't need to be perfect. You're not overexerting your energy. You're doing a minimal amount of work for a minimal amount of result, but it's always a positive result. Now, where you have the chance to make big changes and turn them into your new default is transitions. So, you can either create these artificially, or you can, or they just fall into your lap. For example, like, being closed down for this pandemic fell into our lap, right? And so these transitions, like, where something just dramatically changes, you can either use them as the excuse for not doing what could be done, or you can use them as an excuse to change the way you do things and take your net positive of just +1 to turn it into a +20. So, like, for example, pandemic hits, everybody's schedule is new. Some people change their routine to benefit their fitness. Right? How do they do that? Okay, so now I'm not going into work. That means I'm not commuting the extra hour a day. And I took that hour time windfall and I plugged it right into working out at my home gym. Or I took that hour and I used it to meal prep. And you plug that into your routine, and now all of a sudden there's this huge positive gain. And and you can expend a bunch of energy into it because that energy was being used for something else before. So it's not like you're just going and creating time or energy or space that doesn't exist. Like you literally were just handed it, and you could either have chose to sit down and watch Netflix, or you could have chose to do meal prep, or like you get the millions of different situations. But the thing is like when you make that transition and you make it your new normal, is it compounds every single day and every single week and every single month into something that's way more beneficial than if you had put out that energy on the average day before the pandemic hit, where you didn't have the time and energy. Like you would have had to give something up, you would have had to trade something, you would have had to sleep less, something like that. And like that effort was much harder for the same or less of a result than just implementing it now. And I say that's only one example, but like in wrestling, for example, there's stand-up wrestling and then there's wrestling down on the mat. And where good wrestlers, like you could be a good wrestler and match up with an excellent wrestler and do just fine by just not getting taken down. You may not be creating a lot of offense, but where matches really turned was always when somebody can go right from stand up to on the ground seamlessly and take advantage of the discombobulation or the extra movement that's happening in the transitions. And this is the only thing that I was excellent at as a wrestler. It was the only thing I tried to be really good at. Is I always went from one thing into the next faster, or I had a plan going into that portion of the match. I knew that I was going to immediately go from one move to the next, not one move, re-steady ourselves, and then try and start from scratch. It was taking advantage of opportunities and then going all in on the energy there. Like, it's like, for example, go back to the effort level. It's like in the first 30 seconds of the match, effort level is status quo. I'm working just a little bit harder than the other guy to make sure that I don't lose. As soon as an opportunity arises, you pour all of your energy into that opportunity as fast as you can and pour in. I mean, absolutely pour in, all in, and it's a short period of time, most of the time. Like now our transition period for this pandemic has been 4 months. Like if you've been pouring in for 4 months, you're exhausted. If you pour in for a week, you can probably handle it. And the key is like when you see an opportunity, pour your energy into it, because the return on that time and energy investment during transitions is huge. It keeps you from failure, or it pushes you to excellence, or just maximizes your result in the moment. And this is probably one of the things that I'm most grateful for in wrestling, is like understanding that it's okay to be at just status quo for a period of time. And when you see the right opportunity, just drive in all in full force right at it and take it on. And I mean, it's paid dividends in business. And like, I'm not going to sit here and say that this pandemic hasn't been tough in every facet of life, but it's been a transition in which you pour in your energy into areas where you can make big improvements with the effort, and it stands out exponentially versus what you would have done on a regular basis. So taking the time to just understand that it's okay, like during normal times where there's not anything out of the ordinary, to just be, survive, and be in a net positive. And when special opportunities or emergencies arrive, that you go all in to either survive or to get as far ahead as you can. And if you're consistently conserving your energy and just being net positive on a regular basis, that pouring in during that time, you're going to have the energy to do it, and it's going to make the biggest bang for the buck. So to wrap up today is just questions for you. So like we have three modes. Like we have default mode, emergency mode, and transitional mode. What is your default mode in fitness? This week, were you a net positive? Did you work out consistently? Did you eat well? Were you hydrated? Did you sleep well? Did you take time to relax your mind? And if you're not a net positive, if this is not at least taking you one step in the direction that you want to go, what do you need to change to get there? And I encourage you to find out. If you don't know, come talk to a coach. But we need to get default mode to be going in the positive direction. If your goal is 100 pounds of weight loss and we can lose a pound of fat this week or this month, based on the actions you're doing this week, then you're doing the right things. And that can be your default mode, and that's good. Okay? Always a net positive on default mode. Emergency mode. How do you know when you need to activate it? Is there some sort of trigger where you're like, so for example, if the scale read 220 pounds, that would be a trigger for me. It'd be like, oh crap, something's got to happen. How do we activate your emergency mode? How do you know when we have to kick in and go all in on our fitness? What's the trigger for you? Once you've kind of identified a trigger, what is the first action you're going to take once that trigger has been pulled? What happens? What are you going to do to get out of the emergency and back to it's not an emergency anymore and we're net positive? Okay. Next, transitional opportunities. They don't tend to present themselves when we want them on their own. They just happen at random, and you see them or you don't see them, and you take advantage or you don't take advantage. But what do you need to do in your fitness or your routine that's going to allow you to be prepared to take advantage or go all in at an opportunity during a transition? Right? New job, different commute. What are you going to do to be prepared to take advantage of that change and let it improve your fitness? What do you need to do now to be prepared for that sort of transition? Is it build up a bunch of fitness, slow and steady? When your commute changes to now it's an hour and a half so that you can take the promotion or whatever the thing may be. What do you need to do to be prepared for the next transition in your life? And I think that the greatest thing that fitness in general provides is opportunities and the ability to say yes when a lack of fitness doesn't allow you to do that. So that's different for everybody. Different opportunities, different transitions, different opportunities. But being prepared and ready to go all in on an opportunity may be the difference between success and failure, or quality of life, and so on. So, a couple food for thoughts. What's your default mode? How do we know we're going to need to start our emergency mode? And what are you doing to prepare for transitional opportunities? Thanks for listening to the CrossFit Jungle Gym podcast. We'll see you next time.